What's up guys, Asian here again with another theory crafting video, and today we're going to be discussing the difference between purple quality armor versus gold quality armor, or in other words, epic versus legendary quality on your armor pieces. Now we're not going to be discussing weapons, that's going to be for a separate video. So today we're just going to be focusing really on the armor. So we're going to be looking at both magicka and stamina, and in addition to looking at stamina, we're also going to be looking at whether the penetration set or the damage set makes a bigger difference in how you divide it up in terms of purple versus gold. So real quick, just kind of to go over uh, the process that I used. I did my magicka test on a Nightblade using 4-piece Moon Dancer with the Inferno Staff infused shock damage, and I had an infused Maelstrom Lightning Staff on the back bar with a weapon damage enchant, 2 spell damage, and then I had the default magicka regen glyph on the Moon Dancer necklace. Then I swapped out these pieces of Julianos either for legendary or epic, which you see here. I kept the enchant at the same quality, so I did not use purple level enchants, I used gold level enchants. The reason being that Julianos comes without any enchants, and then so I would imagine that anybody who is creating Julianos or asking somebody to create Julianos for them will be able to supply the enchants themselves. The max magicka enchants actually aren't terribly expensive. For a set of 5, you'd be running maybe around 20k, 24k max for all of them. So that's pretty much the cost of golding out, or maybe half of the piece, depending on how prices for drill wax look like. So that's kind of why I used gold enchants there. It also gave me a little bit more of a one-to-one comparison there. Now, because the PTS does not give us purple quality monster helms, I had to stick with gold quality monster helms, but that's okay because monster helms, because they're only 2-piece effect, golding them out will definitely give you a much larger increase in DPS, particularly because proc sets, like we've discussed in a previous video, proc set damage is based solely on item quality. So golding out your monster helm should be your first priority once you finish golding out your weapons, just because that proc set is going to do a lot more damage when it is golded out compared to when it is purple. So that's kind of how I justify having gold monster helms. Part of it is just because the PTS doesn't give us purple monster helms to work with. So that's kind of what I did for magicka, and just did a couple of parses, one with purple, one with gold. And then I moved over to stamina DK. We aren't going to be doing any of the parses. I already did all the parses that we needed. I just didn't think it was worth it for you guys to sit through 6 different parses just to see the end result here. So hopping over to our stam DK, like I said earlier, we worked with, I was interested in seeing whether the damage set versus the penetration set, if there was a bigger difference there, or if it was going to be more or less the same. So we did Sunder in VO, and then we did Hundings in VO. Now I know Hundings in VO isn't exactly one pen, one damage set, but just the way that the sets work out, I think it's still a fair comparison, because we're still looking at whether gold Hundings is, how much better gold Hundings is compared to purple Hundings. So we're now over on the stem decay. So we kind of did the exact same thing here. Kept the gold Veladreths because, again, PTS doesn't give us access to purple quality monster helms. Otherwise, I would be also be using purple monster helms as well. So the VO remained the same. We stuck with gold jewelry here, all weapon damage enchants. And then we had an infused offhand dagger with weapon damage and a Nirn main hand dagger with poison damage, and then used a Nirn Maelstrom bow with the double ravage health poisons. Now, for something I did changed up here is for the Sunder Flame, I kept the default stamina enchants on the Sunder Flame Jack. The reasoning for this is, while you could potentially just buy or create gold enchants and replace the ones you have on your Sunder Flame Jack, I just want to see whether or not that would make that big of a difference. In reality, in actual raid parses, you're only really looking at a gain of about 200-300 extra stamina from golding out all your enchants. The difference between your small pieces is 26 extra stamina, so you're looking at 78 just from your small pieces, and then the difference between your big pieces is, I believe it's 84, so you're looking at 168, so you're not really looking at that big of a stamina difference, so any difference in enchant quality is going to be pretty small. So that's kind of what I did there for the purple Sunderflame stuff. So I just replaced all the Sunderflame stuff with gold Sunderflame. Those did have gold level enchants, regardless of whether you replaced them or not. When you gold out a dropped piece, the enchant automatically moves up to the equivalent quality. So if I golded out the Sunderflame boots, for instance, then the stamina enchant would automatically go up to a gold quality. Then we basically did the exact same thing. We just replaced these with Hundings. So we did, again, let me see here, we did use purple Hundings, and then we did gold Hundings, again with the gold enchants, because Hundings doesn't come with any standard enchants on it. So that's kind of why what we used there. So we did keep the VO across both, so we just swapped out Sunderflame and Hundings. So that's kind of the process that I used there. Now to kind of discuss the differences between purple and gold quality in terms of the bonuses that you're looking at. So now this is obviously going to vary based on your specific set that you're looking for at. But for right now, let's take a look at Sunderflame, because Sunderflame, let me see if I can find my gold Sunderflame. Here it is. So Sunderflame has basically one of each thing that we're going to be covering here. So we can see here that we're looking at purple versus gold. So in terms of stamina, we're gaining about a 40 extra stamina. It's actually closer to 38 extra stamina for each max stamina or max magicka. Getting 5 additional weapon damage or spell damage, and then for weapon crit you're gaining an additional about 29 extra weapon crit. So that's actually not that big. It's about a 0.1% difference in your weapon crit, because it's 21 to 119 weapon crit is equal to a 1% increase in your weapon critical chance. So you're looking at a 29 increase in weapon crit, ends up being about a 0.1% reflected in your toolbar there. And we can see here that the 5-piece effect actually didn't increase at all, or will it? Actually, let me see if it will increase. Okay, there we go. So the 5-piece effect does increase based on quality there. So you did see we did end up gaining about, actually this is kind of weird and messed up right now, just because the 5-piece seems to be taking into account the gold pieces that you're currently wearing as well. But you are gaining some additional flame damage, and you are gaining about 100 extra physical penetration when you have gold Sunderflame. So that's kind of for Sunderflame. Obviously, if you're doing something like Spriggans or Night Mother's Gaze, you kind of see the exact same thing. Those 5-piece effects do scale according to item quality, so a gold Spriggans full set will give you more penetration compared to a purple Spriggans set. So now it's kind of the same thing for Hundings. For Hundings, so gold Hundings will give you 299 weapon damage as a 5-piece, so you're losing out on an additional 11 extra weapon damage if you have just purple. And it's the same thing for Julianos. Julianos will give you spell crits, max magicka, spell crit, and spell damage, so it's basically kind of the same thing there for Hundings. So you can see here the bonuses between gold and purple quality armor isn't actually that big. You're talking very, very small differences here. Like I said, 0.1% extra weapon crit or spell crit, looking at only 5 extra weapon damage or spell damage. You're only looking at, if you take into consideration how resource pools are calculated into your tooltip, you're only looking at, again, about a 4 to 5 extra damage, depending on your stamina and max magicka modifiers and percentages, things like that. Again, that's kind of the same deal with the damage and crit things. You're also looking at the buffs that you're looking at, passive things like that. That does add up, so it's going to be a little bit more, but with such a small increase, you're not really going to see that big of a difference, even when you add in all those buffs together. So that's kind of the mentality that a lot of people have, that upgrading your armor isn't going to give you that big of a boost in DPS, just because the increases that you're seeing are going to be very, very small. So now hopping over now to our spreadsheet. So this is what we have here. So this is the Magicka Nightblade over here. We have 6 parses on each, so 12 parses in total. Same thing here, Sunderflame, and here we have hundings. We have our averages, we have our spreads, and we have our percentage differences here. So we can see that for across all three different categories that we explored, we're looking at less than a 1% difference in DPS, which is pretty much on point with what a lot of people have said on Reddit and what you can expect to see just from a mathematical standpoint. If you take a look at Assayer's work, you can, and just do the math there, you're pretty much going to be less than a 1% difference. And do keep in mind these are 3 million parses, so you're going to see a little bit more variability in the parses there, especially with the Nightblade, just because of the way Nightblade parsing works. So do keep that in mind too. So these percentages might actually be a little bit smaller than what we have here. You would have to do a lot more parses to get closer to the actual average that you would be doing. But generally speaking, you're looking at less than a 1% difference if you're golding out your armor. So golding on armor, yes, do it eventually, but it's not really going to make that big of a difference. If we take a look at the Magic Nightblade, for instance, we're looking at about 300 DPS difference. If we're looking at the Sunderflame example, we're looking at about 200. For the Hundings, we're looking at 250 DPS difference, so it's a really small difference overall. And I wouldn't necessarily go out and farm gold or try to get all that gold tempers together just so you can gold out your armor. It's not really worth spending all that money. I mean, if you have the money, then go ahead and do it. It's definitely going to help you out. But it's such a small increase in DPS that you're much better off using that time and energy, practicing your rotation, working together with your raid team to kind of figure out buff up times, things like that, and just golding out your weapons. Golding out your weapons is going to give you the highest increase in DPS. That's going to be explained in a separate video. That I will be sure to link in the end of this video here. So kind of the TLDR here, or the TLDW, I guess, is that yes, golding out your armor does increase your DPS, but it is less than a 1% difference. So don't make it your number one priority. Your number one priority should be instead golding out your weapons and improving your rotation, because that's going to give you the biggest boost in DPS. Just talking gear-wise, golding out your weapons and your monster helms are probably going to give you the largest singular boost in your DPS, gear-wise at least. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys found it informative, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.